Hello viewers, this is Not Too Fast here. In today's video, I'll show you how to install and hardwire a dashcam into this vehicle. This is a 2022 Hyundai Palisade. It's one of the best-selling SUV on the market right now. So for many of you that own this vehicle, if you're thinking about installing a dashcam, the information I'm about to show you will be very helpful. Now the dashcam that I'll be installing is an iRoad 2-channel dashcam. What that means is it has a front camera and a rear camera. And this dashcam also has built-in parking mode recording. And for parking mode to work, I will need to connect constant 12 volt and ignition 12 volt in the fuse box. You can use the same steps I'll show you to install your own dashcam. So let's get started. Here's a look at the dashcam that I'll be installing. There's the front camera, rear camera, power cable, rear camera cable, GPS antenna, and windshield mounts. To hardwire the power cable into the fuse box, you also need to use these fuse taps. For this Hyundai, the style of fuse you need is micro 2. Using some rubbing alcohol and a paper towel, clean the surface where you'll be installing the dashcam. To install the dashcam, clip the windshield mount onto the dashcam. Next, remove the backing on double-sided tape. Center a dashcam on the windshield and then place it on the windshield, and the double-sided tape will hold it in place. Connect the power cable. Connect the rear camera cable. Connect the GPS antenna. With the GPS antenna cable, route this up to the headliner and over to the passenger side. Tuck the extra cable behind the headliner. Remove the backing on double-sided tape and then stick this onto the windshield. Let me give you a little tip. If you have a wire like this that's hanging loose, get some 3M double-sided tape, cut a small piece, place it along the edge, and then put the wire on top and it'll hold it in place. As you can see, it looks a lot better now. Next, I'll run the power cable and the rear camera cable up to the headliner and over to the A-pillar on the driver's side. Here's a look at the two cables on this side. And same thing, I use a couple of pieces of double-sided tape to hold the wire in place. Pull back on this weather stripping. With this trim piece, you can pull this back. The next thing you need to do is route both cables behind this airbag right here. Run the power cable down to the A-pillar to the fuse box, and with the rear camera cable, run this up along the side. Remove the side panel. Route the power cable behind the panel. You can also use some Tesa fabric tape to hold the wire in place. with a rear camera cable. Route this along the side. Tuck the cable behind this panel. Pull back on this weather stripping here. Continue running this cable all the way to the back. Tuck the cable behind the panel. With the rear camera, I'll install it on the back window right here. Use some rubbing alcohol to clean the surface. Remove the backing on double-sided tape and stick this onto the back window. Now make sure you don't put the double-sided tape on any of the defrost line, because in the future if you have to remove it, you don't want to damage the defrost line. Connect the rear camera cable. I'll run this cable down to the headliner, and I'll tuck this cable behind this weather stripping. Now I know some of you might be thinking, why don't I hide the wire in this wire loom? I used to go through the trouble of removing all the trims and then routing this wire in here, but I stopped doing it because if you ever need to change out the dash cam or upgrade it, it's really not worth the time. You're just creating so much work for yourself. By doing this way, when you close the hatch, all you'll have is a small loop of wire right here. And it doesn't block your view to the back. Also, if you need to remove the setup, it's very simple. Unplug the wire and then pull this wire out. And with the extra wire I have here, you can tuck it behind this panel. And here's a look at the installed rear camera. Remove the fuse panel door. To hardwire this dash cam into the fuse box, I'll need constant 12 volt and ignition 12 volt. The ignition 12 volt will be used to power the dash cam while you're driving, and the constant 12 volt is used to power the dash cam in parking mode. For this Hyundai Palisade, I'll get the ignition 12 volt from this 10 amp spare fuse, and for the constant 12 volt, I'll use this 10 amp spare fuse. Looking at the actual fuse box, the ignition 12 volt fuse is this 10 amp fuse right here, and the constant 12 volt fuse is this 10 amp fuse right here. You can use a multimeter to test the fuse. First I'll test the constant 12 volt fuse. As you can see, I have 12 volt. If I put the probe on the ignition 12 volt fuse, you see 0 volt. I'll press the start button to turn on the ignition. Now I'll test that fuse, and it has 12 volt. I'll first pull the constant 12 volt fuse. The next thing you need to do is find out which side of the fuse the power is coming in on. As you can see, there are two blades on this fuse. Power will come in on one side and go out on the other. And using a multimeter, I'll be able to find this out. With the fuse out, I'll stick the probe to one side of the fuse. 0 volt. Now I'll stick it on the other side, and I have 12 volt. Now I know the power is coming in on the left side of the fuse and going out on the right side. Now I will remove the ignition 12 volt fuse, and using a multimeter, I'll do the same test to find out which side of the power is coming in on. To test the ignition fuse, I turn on the car's ignition so the fuse slot has power. I'll probe the left side of the ignition fuse. You see 12 volt. Now I'll probe the right side, 0 volt. Now I know the power is coming in on the left side of the fuse and going out on the right side. This fuse you're looking at is a Micro 2 style, and for this install you need 2 Micro 2 fuse taps. You can pick up a pack of 10 Micro 2 fuse taps on Amazon for about 10 bucks. Here's a close-up look of the fuse tap. Now you'll notice on the fuse tap there are 2 slots here. The bottom slot is for you to install the original fuse that you pulled out from the fuse box. So when you install this fuse tap into the fuse box, power will come in on one side, go through this fuse, and come back out on the other side. So with the fuse that you took out from the fuse box, install this into the bottom slot. The top slot will provide power to your accessory, so you also need to install a fuse in this top slot. For this install, I'll install a 10 amp fuse. And when you install this fuse tap into the fuse box, you want the power to come in on this side, go through the fuse, and then go out on this wire. At the end of this wire, you have this butt connector. You need to crimp your hardwire power cable to this wire. And this is why earlier I showed you how to test a fuse box to find out which side the power is coming in on. Once you find out which side the power is coming in on, then you know when you install this fuse tap, the power needs to come in on the left side here to go through a fuse and then go out on the right side here. Now I know a lot of people ask, what happened if I install this incorrectly? So let's say if you install this the other way around, where the power is coming in on the right side here, then it'll go directly to this red wire without going through the fuse. So your dash cam will not have fuse protection. Here's the other fuse tap. I'll go ahead and install the original fuse in the bottom slot, and then install the new fuse in the top slot. With a hardwire power cable, there are 3 wires. The yellow wire needs to connect to constant 12 volt, red wire connects to ignition 12 volt, and the black wire goes to chassis ground. Now crimp the fuse tap to the yellow and red wire. Now plug in the fuse tap. Again, the yellow wire is constant 12 volt. And the red wire is ignition 12 volt. This is what it looks like with the 2 fuse taps installed. This way the power is coming in on the left side, it'll go through the fuse and go out on the right side. With the ground wire, I'll connect it to this 10mm bolt, and this bolt is tied to the chassis ground. Here's the ground wire. Put the ring terminal behind the bolt. With the extra wire, bundle it up and put a tie wrap on it. And tuck it behind the dash. Now you can put the fuse panel cover back on. Reinstall the side panel. And that's it. With everything installed, I'll turn on the ignition.
Driving mode to start recording. Safe driving.
The dash cam will power on and begin recording. And when I turn off the ignition, the dash cam will go into parking mode.
Records in parking mode.
So if you own a Hyundai Palisade and you want to install a car dash camera in the vehicle, I hope you found this video to be helpful. Now depending on the type of dash cam you get, it might not have parking mode recording and therefore does not require a hardwire kit. And usually those types use a cigarette lighter power plug, which is very easy to install. Now if you do have a hardwire kit similar to what I showed you in this video, do pay attention to the yellow and red wire. Many manufacturers will designate the yellow wire as constant 12 volt and the red wire ignition 12 volt. But there are some manufacturers that will flip it around where the red wire is constant 12 volt and the yellow wire is ignition 12 volt. So make sure you check that before you install it. For a list of some of the tools used in this video, check out the links below. If you have any questions or comments, leave one in the comment section. Thank you. Thank you for watching this video. To support this channel, remember to click on thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and turn on the notification bell so you get notified of new videos.